Stop running after people who look right through you, because every step you take toward someone who won't value you is a step away from your own self-worth. The hard truth about human nature is that chasing rarely earns appreciation. It usually kills your value instead. The harder you pursue someone who has already chosen to keep their distance, the more control you hand them. But the second you stop chasing, things start to shift. You take back your attention, your confidence, and your calm. This is why learning to stop chasing people who ignore you is one of the most powerful choices you'll ever make. The hardest truth about human nature is this: the more desperately you chase someone who has decided to ignore you, the smaller you become in their eyes. This has nothing to do with how smart you are, how kind you are, or your worth as a human being. It's simply psychology. People watch behavior, and behavior always speaks louder than any words. When your actions keep showing that you're willing to give up your time, your peace, and your dignity just to get someone's attention, you're quietly telling them your attention matters less than theirs. That's the exact moment the balance of power starts to tip. Most people never notice this happening because they mix up persistence with love and effort with loyalty. They think that if they just keep trying, keep explaining, keep proving themselves, the other person will eventually wake up and see their worth. But respect isn't built through endless chasing. Respect grows when someone sees that you respect yourself enough to know when your effort isn't being returned. There's a real difference between fighting for a healthy relationship and chasing someone who's already decided to keep you at arm's length. One creates connection, the other slowly eats away at your confidence. Robert Greene often points out that people measure strength through actions, not intentions. You might believe you're simply showing dedication, but when that dedication exists without any respect coming back, it stops looking like strength. It starts looking like emotional dependence. Human nature rarely rewards desperation because desperation broadcasts fear. It tells the other person you're scared of losing them, even if losing them means losing yourself in the process. And once someone senses that fear, they gain leverage over you without ever having to ask for it. Think about what really happens when someone leaves your message unanswered. In that moment, nothing has actually changed except the silence. But your mind starts writing stories anyway. Maybe they're upset. Maybe they're pulling away. Maybe you said the wrong thing. Instead of turning back to your own life, you get trapped inside a loop of guesses. So you send another message hoping it'll calm your anxiety, but you're not fixing anything. You're feeding it. Every attempt to force a reply hands the other person more control over how you feel, because now your peace depends on something they decide to give or keep from you. The strongest people refuse to live that way. They know attention is one of the most valuable things they have. Every minute spent chasing someone who keeps ignoring them is a minute stolen from building something better. Instead of asking, "How do I get this person to notice me?" they ask a much stronger question. Why am I pouring so much energy into someone who's shown so little interest in giving any back? That one question changes everything. It moves your focus away from chasing approval and toward protecting your self-respect. There's another lesson buried in all of this. People show you their real priorities through steady actions, not passing words. Anyone can promise to change when they're scared of losing access to you. Anyone can offer a burst of attention when it benefits them. But consistent behavior tells the real story. If someone keeps ignoring you while still expecting you to stay available, they're showing you exactly how much they value what you bring. Strong people notice these patterns. They stop making excuses for behavior that's already become predictable. Rather than fighting reality, they accept it and make choices that protect their peace. This doesn't mean turning bitter or giving up on caring about people. It simply means you stop forcing connections that ask you to abandon your own dignity. Self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It quietly steps away from situations where appreciation has stopped existing. It understands that your worth doesn't grow just because someone finally decides to look your way. Your worth was always there. The only mistake was thinking you needed someone else's attention to prove it. Funny enough, the moment you stop chasing is usually the moment clarity finally arrives. The mental noise begins to fade, your thoughts settle, your energy flows back toward your goals, your growth, and your own future instead of circling around someone else's choices. Whether that person ever changes stops mattering so much because you're no longer measuring your happiness by how they respond. That's where real freedom begins. You stop begging people to pick you because you finally picked yourself. Never forget this. People who truly value your presence rarely make you compete for their attention. Healthy relationships run on mutual effort, mutual respect, and mutual appreciation. When all the effort comes from just one side, the relationship slowly turns into a weight instead of a source of strength. Walking away from that kind of imbalance isn't giving up. It's refusing to lose yourself while trying to hold on to someone who's already shown you exactly where you stand. And once you stop chasing people who ignore you, the next step is learning how emotional detachment protects your peace, because no one can manipulate a person whose self-worth is no longer chained to someone else's attention. The moment you stop chasing people who ignore you, another challenge shows up right away. Even if your actions have changed, your emotions often haven't caught up yet. Your hands may have stopped typing messages, but your mind is still waiting on a reply. You may have stopped calling, but you're still wondering if they miss you. This is where most people get stuck. They think walking away is the finish line. But really, the bigger battle is learning to detach emotionally. Because as long as your happiness depends on someone else's attention, they still hold power over you, even after they've left your life completely. Emotional detachment gets misunderstood a lot. Many people assume it means turning cold, heartless, or unable to love anyone. That's not true at all. Real emotional detachment means refusing to let someone else's choices define your self-worth. It means accepting that you can't control who stays, who leaves, or who decides to value you. The only thing truly within your control is how you respond. And once that clicks, you start reclaiming the power you didn't even realize you'd given away. Robert Greene keeps showing us that the strongest people aren't the ones controlling others. They're the ones who've learned to control themselves. Human nature is predictable in one particular way. People naturally test emotional boundaries. Some will ignore you just to see if you'll chase. Some will pull back attention just to see if you'll panic. Others create distance simply to measure how much sway they have over your emotions. They might never say it out loud, but their actions give it away. If every small shift in their behavior instantly shifts your emotional state, they learn that your peace runs through them. That's power they never earned. Think about how often people become trapped in their own minds after being ignored. They replay the same conversations over and over, hunting for a mistake they may never have made. They picture different outcomes. They convince themselves that one more message, one more explanation, or one more chance will somehow fix everything. Days turn into weeks, and their attention stays stuck on someone who's already chosen to walk away. They're physically moving forward, but mentally they're frozen in the same spot. This is exactly why emotional attachment can end up more damaging than the rejection itself. It keeps you tied to someone who's no longer tied to you. Strong people understand something different. They realize closure isn't always something another person hands to you. Sometimes closure is a decision you make on your own. It's the moment you stop asking why someone couldn't appreciate you and start asking how you can appreciate your own life again. That shift changes everything. Instead of burning energy trying to figure out someone else's behavior, you start pouring that energy into becoming stronger, wiser, and more disciplined. You stop living inside their world and go back to building yours. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking their value drops because someone chose to ignore them. But someone else's failure to see your worth doesn't lower your worth. It only exposes their priorities. Picture carrying a diamond into a room full of people who don't understand what it's worth. The diamond doesn't become less precious just because the people around it can't appreciate it. Its value stays exactly the same. In the same way, your character, your integrity, and your potential don't vanish just because one person decides not to notice them. The real mistake isn't being overlooked. The real mistake is letting someone else's view of you become the standard you measure your identity by. This is exactly why emotional detachment builds real confidence. Confidence doesn't mean believing everyone will like you. Confidence means knowing you'll be completely okay even if they don't. It means understanding that rejection isn't proof that something is wrong with you. Often, it's simply proof that two people belong on different paths. The strongest people don't spend their lives trying to force every closed door open. When a door stays shut despite honest effort, they stop knocking, they turn around, and keep walking toward chances that welcome them instead of doubting them. There's another powerful truth about the mind here. The less you depend on outside validation, the more emotionally steady you become. Praise stops controlling your ego, and criticism stops wrecking your confidence. Someone going quiet no longer sends you into panic because your peace is no longer borrowed from anyone else. You wake up each day with a sense of direction that comes from inside you, instead of waiting for someone else to decide your mood. That kind of inner steadiness can't be manipulated because it's built on self-respect, not on approval. None of this means you stop caring about relationships. Healthy relationships are still one of the greatest gifts in life. But healthy relationships are built on mutual effort, not emotional dependence. They push you toward growth instead of insecurity. They bring peace instead of constant worry. They're built on choice, not desperation. The moment a relationship demands that you keep giving up your dignity just to hold on to it, it's already stopped serving your future. Once you truly master emotional detachment, you find a freedom that chasing could never give you. You stop begging for attention because you realize your attention is too valuable to waste on people who won't appreciate it. You stop fearing rejection because your sense of self is no longer tied to whether someone else accepts you. And once your emotions are no longer ruled by people who ignore you, the next step is discovering the power of silence, because what you choose not to say often carries more strength than anything you could ever explain. Once you stop chasing people who ignore you and start mastering emotional detachment, there's one habit that will guard your peace more than almost anything else: the discipline of silence. Most people believe every misunderstanding deserves an explanation, every rejection deserves one more conversation, and every cold response deserves one more attempt to fix things. But that's not really how human nature works. The more you try to convince someone to value you after they've repeatedly shown you indifference, the weaker your own position becomes. There comes a point where silence speaks louder than any words ever could, because silence refuses to beg for something that should have been freely given in the first place: respect. One of the biggest mistakes people make after being ignored is thinking they can change someone's feelings through endless explaining. They write long messages trying to prove their intentions. They defend every action, answer every accusation, and hope that if the other person finally understands them, things will go back to how they were. But genuine respect isn't built through explanations. If someone truly values your presence, honest conversation can make the relationship stronger. But if they've already decided to ignore you, one more explanation usually changes very little. Instead of building understanding, it often makes it look like you're afraid of losing their approval. Robert Greene often teaches that mystery holds a unique kind of power. People are naturally drawn to what they can't fully understand. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people who've already stopped listening, you break a pattern they were expecting. They were waiting for another message, another apology, another attempt to hold on. Instead, they meet silence. Not silence born from anger or spite, but silence born from self-respect. That difference changes everything. You're no longer trying to control what they think of you. You're simply refusing to spend your energy where it no longer means anything. Think about how often people lose battles they never needed to enter. Someone misreads them, spreads an opinion, or questions their worth, and right away they feel pulled to respond. Before long, they're stuck in conversations that eat up hours, days, even months of emotional energy. The real problem isn't the disagreement itself. The real problem is believing every person is owed your explanation. Powerful people understand that not every opinion needs a reply, and not every misunderstanding needs correcting. Sometimes the strongest response is letting your character speak louder than your words ever could. Silence often gets mistaken for weakness because it looks passive from the outside. In truth, silence takes tremendous discipline. It means holding back the urge to defend yourself, resisting the need to win every argument, and letting go of the temptation to force someone else to see your worth. Anyone can react out of emotion. Very few people can stay calm when their ego is challenged. That calmness is what separates emotionally mature people from those who are constantly steered by how others behave. There's another psychological truth hidden inside silence. Every emotional reaction teaches people how to control you. If someone ignores you and you chase after them right away, they learn that distance makes you run toward them. If someone criticizes you and you jump to defend yourself, they learn that criticism grabs your attention. If someone pulls back their approval and you panic, they learn your confidence depends on them accepting you. But when your response stays calm, measured, and intentional, those patterns start to fade away. People can no longer predict your emotions because your choices are no longer driven by fear. This doesn't mean you should avoid healthy communication altogether. Silence should never take the place of honesty in relationships built on mutual respect. If someone genuinely cares about you and a misunderstanding happens, a mature conversation is often the best way forward. But there's a real difference between talking things through with someone who wants to understand you and repeatedly explaining yourself to someone who's already chosen to be indifferent. One builds trust, the other slowly chips away at your dignity. Wisdom means knowing the difference. Another reason silence carries so much power is that it makes space for the truth to show itself. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, and stop forcing conversations, people's real intentions become impossible to hide. The ones who genuinely value you will make the effort to understand. The ones who only cared about your constant attention will quietly fade away. That realization can hurt, but it also brings clarity. And clarity is always worth more than false hope because it lets you pour your life into relationships built on mutual respect instead of one-sided effort. Many people fear silence because they mistake it for losing. They believe that if they stop talking, stop explaining, or stop chasing, They've somehow admitted defeat. But real defeat is losing yourself while trying to convince someone else to see your worth. Walking away from endless explaining isn't surrender. It's a decision to protect your peace instead of trading it away for temporary validation. The strongest people understand that dignity isn't preserved by winning every conversation, but by knowing which conversations are no longer worth having. Eventually, silence becomes more than just the absence of words. It becomes proof of inner confidence. It shows that your identity no longer hinges on someone else's opinion, and that your self-respect runs deeper than your need to be understood by everyone. When you reach that point, you stop chasing people who ignore you because your energy is now invested in something far greater than their approval. And once silence becomes a reflection of your confidence rather than your pain, the next step is building a purpose so meaningful that you no longer have time to chase people who've already chosen to walk away. After you stop chasing people who ignore you, master emotional detachment, and learn the discipline of silence, one question still remains. What do you do with all the time, energy, and attention you've taken back for yourself? If you simply stop chasing people without giving your life a new direction, you leave behind an empty space that your old habits will eventually creep back into. That's why the next step isn't just walking away from the wrong people. It's walking toward a purpose so meaningful that it becomes impossible to waste your life chasing those who have already chosen to keep their distance. One of the biggest reasons people keep chasing others isn't that they truly need those relationships. It happens because there is nothing bigger pulling them ahead. When your life has no real purpose, every rejection feels like the whole world is ending. Every message left unanswered turns into a huge deal. Every person's opinion weighs more than it should, simply because your sense of self has no stronger base to stand on. But when your life is guided by meaningful goals, real growth, and a clear vision for what's ahead, something amazing starts to happen. Other people's choices stop controlling how you feel because your focus is poured into something far bigger than their approval. Robert Greene often points out that the most influential people in history stayed deeply loyal to a purpose that went beyond passing emotions. They understood that attention is a limited resource. Every hour wasted on pointless conflict is an hour taken away from mastering your craft. Every day spent trying to convince someone to see your worth is a day you didn't spend becoming someone whose worth speaks for itself. They didn't become extraordinary by dodging rejection. They became extraordinary by refusing to let rejection pull them off their mission. Picture two people going through the same kind of disappointment. Both get ignored by someone they care about. The first person spends weeks replaying old conversations, checking their phone constantly, imagining different endings, and wondering what they could have done differently. Their whole life gets stuck in a loop of emotional dependence. The second person feels that same sting of disappointment, but once they sit with the pain for a moment, they turn back to their goals. They read, they learn, they train, they build, they create, and they keep growing. Months down the line, the gap between them becomes obvious. One is still sitting around waiting for validation. The other has built a stronger life for themselves because they took that same energy and pointed it somewhere better. This is one of the hidden truths about personal power. The energy you use to spend chasing people can become the same energy that transforms your entire future. Just imagine what could happen if every hour you spent worrying about someone who ignored you was instead spent learning a valuable skill, improving your health, sharpening your discipline, or creating something worthwhile. The results won't show up overnight, but given time, they will completely reshape how confident you feel. confidence built through your own progress is so much stronger than confidence borrowed from someone else's attention. A lot of people assume that success automatically earns respect because of money, status, or recognition. Those things do shape how people react to you, sure. But the real reason success changes your presence runs deeper than that. It's psychological. A person who has purpose simply carries themselves differently. They speak with more certainty because their sense of identity no longer depends on being liked by everyone they cross paths with. They become more selective with their time because they know exactly how valuable it is. They stop chasing after every chance for approval because they're already committed to something that gives their life real meaning. That quiet certainty shows up long before the success itself ever arrives. Purpose also shields you from being emotionally manipulated. A person with no direction can easily get thrown off by criticism, rejection, or a little bit of temporary praise. But someone who wakes up each day with a clear mission knows these things are just small bumps, not real roadblocks. They stop letting every emotional challenge drag them away from what actually matters. Instead of reacting on impulse, they ask themselves one simple question: will this even matter 5 years from now? Most of the time, the honest answer is no. That realization lets them shift their focus back to the work that's actually building their future. There's another important lesson buried inside this idea. Purpose teaches you patience. When your entire world spins around one person's attention, you crave instant answers, instant replies, instant reassurance. But meaningful goals demand long-term thinking. They remind you that real growth happens slowly, through steady effort, not through emotional urgency. The more you dedicate yourself to becoming stronger, wiser, and more disciplined, the less appealing chasing people starts to feel. You begin to see it clearly for what it really is: a distraction pulling you away from the life you're capable of building.